Hadrian Flintlock. Hadrian Flintlock, they called him, though most folks in the valley just knew him as the glassblower. Each morning, before the sun fully wrestled its way over the ridgeline, he'd be at his furnace, coaxing molten sand into delicate forms. Not vases or goblets, mind you, but gears, lenses, and the intricate clockwork hearts of things no one quite understood. His workshop, a small stone building nestled against the hills, hummed with a quiet, persistent energy. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight, illuminating rows of half-finished projects, each a testament to his restless mind. He wasn't a man for chatter, preferring the company of his creations, the rhythmic hiss of the furnace, and the satisfying click of metal on metal. Life was orderly, predictable, a slow, deliberate burn. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a boy who looked barely old enough to shave. It was brief, stark, and changed everything. Father passed, estate, urgent, return. Hadrian hadn't spoken to his father in nearly 20 years. A stern, unforgiving man, a physicist obsessed with theories of time and relativity, dismissed as madness by the scientific community. Hadrian had chosen glass, the tangible, the beautiful, to escape his father's abstract world. But now, the estate, and the implication of what it might contain, dragged him back. A cold dread settled in his gut, heavier than any glass he'd ever melted. He tried to make sense of the estate immediately. The house was a crumbling Victorian monstrosity, crammed with books, papers, and bizarre contraptions. He sorted through decades of research, equations scrawled on every available surface, diagrams of impossible machines. He focused on what he understood, the mechanics, the engineering. He tried to replicate some of the simpler devices, hoping to find a clue, a logical starting point. But it was chaos. Nothing worked as it should. The research was fragmented, incomplete, bordering on delusional. He spent weeks lost in the labyrinth of his father's mind, achieving nothing but exhaustion and a growing sense of despair. Old Man Abernathy, the town's retired librarian, had been a friend to his father, a quiet observer of his eccentricities. Hadrian sought him out, hoping for insight, for a translation of the madness. Abernathy listened patiently, puffing on his pipe, then pointed to a hidden compartment in a bookshelf, revealing a leather-bound journal. "Your father," he said, his voice raspy with age, "believed time wasn't a river, but a landscape. And he believed he could build a machine to traverse it." Abernathy also revealed his father had corresponded with a doctor. Aris Thorne, a reclusive physicist rumored to have continued his father's work in isolation. Dr. Thorne lived in a remote observatory high in the mountains. He was a gaunt, intense man surrounded by complex equipment. He agreed to help, but only if Hadrian proved his dedication. He subjected him to rigorous training, advanced physics, quantum mechanics, the intricacies of temporal displacement. Hadrian, driven by a newfound purpose, absorbed the knowledge with a relentless focus he hadn't known he possessed. He learned to manipulate energy fields, to calibrate chronometers with impossible precision, and to understand the theoretical risks of altering the past. The work was arduous, isolating, but it slowly transformed him from a craftsman into a scientist. Thorne tasked Hadrian with calibrating a small, experimental device, atemporal anchors, designed to stabilize localized distortions in time. The test, to retrieve a specific object from a few minutes in the past. Hadrian, trembling with anticipation, activated the device. The workshop shimmered, and for a fleeting moment he saw a duplicate of himself working at the furnace. He successfully retrieved the object, a small glass hummingbird he'd been working on, but the process drained him, leaving him weak and disoriented. It was a small victory, but it confirmed the possibility of temporal manipulation. He discovered a hidden entry in his father's journal, detailing a catastrophic test of the full-scale time machine. a test that resulted in a localized temporal paradox and the disappearance of his mother. The machine, it seemed, wasn't just capable of traversing time, but of unraveling it. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had believed he was continuing his father's work, but he was potentially reopening a wound that could destroy everything. Thorne, when confronted, confessed to knowing the risks but believing the potential rewards. Understanding the fundamental nature of time outweighed them. A bitter argument ensued, ending with Hadrian severing ties with Thorne. He realized he wasn't trying to continue his father's work, but to correct it. He wouldn't attempt to traverse time, but to stabilize it, to prevent the paradox his father had unleashed. He began to redesign the machine, focusing on containment and control, transforming it from a vehicle for exploration into a shield against temporal instability. He poured all his energy into the project, driven by a desperate hope of averting a catastrophe and, perhaps, finding a way to bring his mother back. He would use the machine not to change the past, but to preserve the present. The temporal instability was growing, manifesting as localized distortions and strange anomalies. He activated the redesigned machine, directing its energy towards the epicenter of the instability. The observatory shook violently as the machine fought to contain the unraveling fabric of time. He adjusted the energy flow, pushing the machine to its limits, battling against the relentless force of the paradox. It was a grueling, desperate struggle, a race against oblivion. He saw fleeting glimpses of alternate realities, fractured timelines, the terrifying consequences of unchecked temporal manipulation. The instability subsided. The machine hummed with a steady, contained energy. He had succeeded. The paradox was contained. The timeline stabilized. He didn't find his mother, but he saved the present. He dismantled the machine piece by piece, vowing to never again tamper with the delicate fabric of time. He returned to his glass-blowing, a changed man. The workshop, once a refuge from the world, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where he could create beauty, order, and a sense of calm in a world that was, ultimately, too fragile to be altered. The grief remained, but it was tempered with a quiet sense of purpose. He would create, not to conquer time, but to celebrate the fleeting, precious moments within it.